an event that would forever alter the course of history, captured in a single, haunting image. Though only 2 lives were lost that day, the assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand had been likened to the 9/11 of the 20th century. Just as the attack on the Twin Towers reshaped global politics and unleashed the devastating war on terror, the murder of the Archduke ignited the primal catastrophe of the First World War, a conflict that toppled empires and gave rise to a new world order. Yet behind this monumental event lies a tragic tale. Young Serbian men, driven by ideals of sacrifice for a greater cause, and a secret society, harboring grand nationalist ambitions. With the Ottoman Empire's position weakening in the 1870s, the Russian Empire saw an opportunity to expand its influence in the Balkans and support Slavic populations. On April 24, 1877, Russia declared war on the Ottomans. After several battles, the war ended in a decisive victory for Russia and its allies. By March 3, 1878, the Treaty of San Stefano was signed, establishing a large Bulgarian state and granting significant territories to Russia. However, major European powers, including Austria-Hungary and Britain, were alarmed by Russian expansion. To balance their interests, the Treaty of Berlin was drafted. Its key terms greatly reduced the size of Bulgaria compared to the San Stefano Agreement, recognizing Romania, Serbia, and Montenegro as independent states, and gave Austria-Hungary control over Bosnia and Herzegovina. These changes heightened tensions between Austria-Hungary and Serbia, fueling Serbian nationalism. Over the following 25 years, the Obrenović dynasty, which ruled Serbia, developed close ties with Austria-Hungary. Serbian nationalists accused them of being overly submissive to foreign powers. The dynasty's unpopular policies, autocratic tendencies, and King Alexander's controversial marriage to Draga Mine, a widow with no noble lineage, alienated the Serbian elite, military and public. On May 29, 1903, Dragutin Dimitrijević, later known as Apis, a young Serbian army captain, led a group of disaffected officers in storming the royal palace in Belgrade. The officers brutally murdered Alexander and Draga, throwing their mutilated bodies out of a window. This coup d'etat ended the Obrenović dynasty and brought a descendant of the rival Karađorđević family, Peter Karađorđević, to the throne. Under the new dynasty, Serbia moved away from Austria-Hungary and sought closer ties with Russia and other Slavic nations. This shift aligned with the growing nationalist ambitions for regional dominance and the pursuit of Greater Serbia. Serbia began to push for the liberation of Serbs living under oppressive regimes, organizing guerrilla actions against Ottoman forces in the Balkans. Following Austria-Hungary's formal annexation of Bosnia and Herzegovina in 1908, Ljuba Jovanović Ćupa and Bogdan Radenković, political activists advocating South Slav unity, proposed the idea of centralizing efforts for cross-border campaigns. This proposal resonated with Apis, who on May 22, 1911, officially founded the organization Unification or Death, later known as the Black Hand, a name inspired by a popular novel about conspirators. Apis, Jovanović, Radinković, and 2 other officers signed the founding document. As a military officer and intelligence chief, Apis embraced violence as a means of achieving political goals. Under his leadership, the Black Hand prioritized extreme methods, rejecting diplomacy, or political compromise in favor of sabotage, assassination, and insurrection. New members underwent initiation rituals inspired by Masonic practices, swearing oaths of loyalty and readiness to die for the cause. The organization's initial focus was foreign policy, conducting intelligence operations in Austria-Hungary and Ottoman Turkey. Their ultimate goal was to consolidate all Serbs into a single state, incorporating elements of Yugoslavism. The Black Hand's constitution declared that membership was open to all Serbs, regardless of gender, religion, or birthplace. The group emphasized revolutionary struggle over cultural efforts, maintaining strict secrecy and establishing revolutionary networks in all regions where Serbs lived. Domestically, the organization aimed to influence Serbian institutions, positioning the country as a leader, similar to Piedmont during Italian unification. The Black Hand's growing influence even attracted the support of Crown Prince Alexander, who contributed funds to the organization, believing it to be a patriotic force advancing Serbia's national mission. In 1911, Apis organized a failed assassination attempt on Austria-Hungary's Emperor Franz Joseph. During the Balkan Wars in 1912 to 1913, the Black Hand strongly supported Serbia's territorial expansion. They conducted covert operations, including smuggling weapons, recruiting fighters, and aiding insurgents in Ottoman territories. Despite significant territorial gains, the Treaty of Bucharest 1913, which ended the Second Balkan War, denied Serbia access to the Adriatic Sea. Austria-Hungary's role in creating Albania as a buffer state to block Serbian expansion fueled resentment and radicalized the Black Hand. Turning their focus westward, the Black Hand sought to destabilize Austria-Hungary to create opportunities for Serbia to annex Bosnian and other Slavic territories. For this purpose, they collaborated with a Bosnian revolutionary group. During their occupation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Austro-Hungarian authorities viewed Orthodox Serbs, nearly half the population, as the primary threat to stability. The regime sought to impose a unified Bosnian identity, designating Croatian as the administrative language and favoring Catholic Croats over Orthodox Serbs and Bosnian Muslims. To maintain the loyalty of the Bosnian Muslim elites, the authorities upheld a feudal system while enforcing a strict police regime on the general population. As a result, both Orthodox Serbs and Bosnian Muslims grew increasingly opposed to Austro-Hungarian rule. After 1903, Serbian democracy under the Karađorđević dynasty inspired Bosnian youth to form groups advocating for Serbian unity, with Belgrade emerging as their cultural and political center. Austria-Hungary's annexation of Bosnia in 1908 further exasperated tensions, as many Bosnians viewed the act as illegal and provocative. In June 1910, Bogdan Djerić, a leading figure in Serbian nationalism, attempted to assassinate the governor of Bosnia after firing 5 shots and assuming he had succeeded. Djerić used the 6th bullet to take his own life. In reality, none of the bullets struck the governor, but Djerić's act of defiance became a powerful symbol of resistance. He was the first in Bosnia and Herzegovina to use tyrannicide as a method of political struggle, and his sacrifice inspired a new generation. During their trial, members of the Young Bosnia movement admitted to spending hours at Djerić's grave, often leaving flowers in his honor. Young Bosnia was a diverse group of Serb and Yugoslav patriots, anarchists, and social revolutionaries, influenced by Giuseppe Mazzini's Young Italia. Its members, primarily Serb students, were inspired by anarchist and Russian populist literature as well as Western philosophers like Nietzsche, Masaryk, and Bergson. Nietzsche's philosophy in particular shaped their ideology, emphasizing Promethean activism and the importance of personal sacrifice. The group sought liberation from colonial oppression and opposed efforts to suppress or erase Serb national identity. Their immediate goal was to merge Bosnia and Herzegovina with Serbia, a vision that aligned them with the Black Hand. After the Balkan Wars, conditions in Bosnia deteriorated further. Austria-Hungary imposed harsh emergency measures, cracking down on Serbian organizers and staging trials for high treason. In this repressive environment, one member of Young Bosnia concluded that assassinating Archduke Franz Ferdinand was a logical and necessary response. Franz Ferdinand was the heir presumptive to the throne of Austria-Hungary. As the eldest nephew of Emperor Franz Joseph, Ferdinand became the likely successor after the suicide of Franz Joseph's only son. However, his difficult temperament and uncharismatic nature made him widely disliked within his inner circle. Ferdinand was also far from a pleasant figure. He was a reactionary conservative who harbored a deep dislike for Hungarians and Slavs, and believed in Austria's right to stomp on its minorities. Despite these views, he envisioned significant reforms for the empire, including universal male suffrage and greater autonomy for its various nationalities. He believed these changes would strengthen the imperial family's grip on power. Yet, Emperor Franz Joseph staunchly opposed Ferdinand's plans, blocking his efforts at every turn. Ferdinand's marriage to Sophie, Duchess of Hohenberg, further deepened tensions with his family. Sophie was considered unsuitable as she did not belong to a reigning or formerly reigning royal family. Consequently, their children were excluded from the line of succession, isolating Ferdinand within the imperial court. For Serbian nationalists, Ferdinand's proposed reforms represented a significant threat. By granting minorities greater autonomy within Austro-Hungarian rule, Ferdinand could pacify Slavic populations and undermine support for Serbian nationalist movements. Following the Balkan Wars, the Black Hand experienced significant changes. Two key ideologists, including Luba Jovanović Čupa, died during the conflict, and many members left the organization, believing their duty to Serbdom was fulfilled with the liberation of Old Serbia and Macedonia. However, Apis, now a lieutenant colonel, and a small corps of others, remained politically active, continuing to engage in internal and external crises. When news emerged that Ferdinand would visit Sarajevo in June 1914, Apis and his allies collaborated with Young Bosnia to plan his assassination. They recruited, trained, and armed 3 young Bosnians for the mission: Trifko Grabeš, Nedeljko Čabrinović, and Gavrilo Princip. All 3 came from impoverished Serbian families and had developed strong nationalist convictions during their youth. At the time of assassination, they were only 19 years old. While some debate the Black Hand's ultimate intentions, arguing they aimed to intimidate rather than kill Ferdinand, there is no doubt about their complicity in the plot. On the morning of June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife, Sophie, arrived in Sarajevo to a mix of ceremonial grandeur and simmering tension. The visit was meant to display imperial strength and foster loyalty. But the well-publicized motorcade route also provided an opportunity for the conspirators to carry out their plot. The young Bosnians stationed themselves along the route, armed with pistols, bombs, and cyanide capsules, waiting for their moment to strike. As the Archduke's motorcade moved through the crowded streets, the first assassin, Chabrinovich, hurled a hand grenade toward it. The bomb struck the folded convertible roof of the car, only to bounce off and explode beneath the following vehicle in the convoy. Shrapnel and debris flew, wounding several passengers and bystanders, including Sophie, though very mildly, but leaving the Archduke unharmed. In the chaos, Chabrinovich swallowed a cyanide capsule and jumped into the nearby river to escape. But the poison only made him vomit, and the shallow water thwarted his suicide attempt. He was quickly apprehended, and the motorcade sped away, narrowly escaping disaster, for now. Normally, this would spark a state of emergency that would have the entire visit cancelled, but the stubborn Ferdinand proclaimed that the assassin was mentally ill and insisted on continuing his schedule, despite his wife's injury. At the Sarajevo City Hall, he gave a speech, outwardly calm, but seething with anger over the attempt on his life. After the reception, the Archduke decided to visit the hospital where the bombing victims were being treated, showing concern for those harmed in the attack. However, a last-minute decision to alter the motorcade's route to the hospital set the stage for tragedy. As the cars made their way through Sarajevo, confusion among the drivers led to a wrong turn onto Franz Joseph Street, a quiet side road near the Latin Bridge. The driver of the Archduke's car realized the mistake and attempted to reverse, but the engine stalled, leaving the vehicle momentarily stranded. Fate placed Princip, who had given up his initial position after the failed bombing, at the exact spot where the car came to a stop. Princip seized the moment. Drawing a pistol, he stepped forward through the stunned crowd and fired 2 shots at point-blank range. The first bullet struck Sophie in the abdomen, and she slumped into her seat, gasping for air. The second struck Ferdinand in the neck, severing an artery. Blood poured from his wound as he reportedly cried, "Sophie, Sophie, don't die. Stay alive for our children." His pleas were in vain. As the car sped toward the governor's residence, Sophie succumbed to her injuries, and moments later, so did the Archduke. By the time they arrived, both were dead, their lives extinguished in a matter of seconds. Meanwhile, Princip attempted to swallow cyanide to avoid capture, but like Chabrinovich, the poison failed to take his life. Overpowered by bystanders, he was arrested, bloodied and defiant. The Austro-Hungarian authorities descended upon the conspirators with relentless fury. Interrogated and shackled, Gavrilo Princip revealed the connections between young Bosnia and the Black Hand. During the trial, when Ferdinand's last words to Sophie were recited, Princip broke down in tears. The assassins were not hardened killers, but impassioned youth, driven by their fervor for the Serbian nationalist cause. Unlike the militaristic and strategic Black Hand, young Bosnia was idealistic and grassroots. Their actions were not akin to the 20th century idea of terrorists who revel in indiscriminate carnage. Instead, their focus was narrowly targeted on carriers of power. Notably, they had not expected Sophie to accompany Ferdinand that day. She rarely joined him in Vienna due to the controversy surrounding their marriage. Her unexpected presence likely caused Chabrinovic to falter in his attempt, and Princip later admitted that her death was unintended. It is arguable that Apis and his Black Hand colleagues exploited the young nationalists to serve their political objectives. Princip's youth spared him the gallows, but he was sentenced to die slowly in a squalid prison cell, where tuberculosis claimed him in 1918. The other assassins met similar grim fates, succumbing to illness or despair. Their vision of a free, South Slavic state became indelibly strained by the blood of millions. The assassination reverberated through Vienna's corridors of power, where Austro-Hungarian officials, blinded by rage, seized the moment to pursue Serbia's destruction. The Austrian press weaponized Ferdinand's poignant last words to incite resentment towards Serbia and garner public sympathy for the empire. Although the Serbian government was not directly complicit in the plot, evidence suggests they learned of it a month in advance but did little to stop it. The Black Hand's underground network had powerful allies within the Serbian army, and the Prime Minister feared a coup if he interfered with the secret society's activities. Austria-Hungary issued an ultimatum to Serbia, so severe that rejection was inevitable, even as Serbia scrambled to appease its adversary. On July 28, 1914, war was declared, and Europe's fragile alliances erupted into a global conflict. Russia mobilized to defend Serbia. Germany pledged loyalty to Austria-Hungary, and France, Britain, and eventually nations across the world were drawn into the inferno. Within weeks, the world was at war. For the Black Hand, the assassination's success proved a fatal irony. Their dream of uniting the South Slavs under Serbian leadership turned into a nightmare. By 1916, tensions between the Black Hand and the Serbian government reached a breaking point. Apis's violent methods had made him powerful enemies, and in 1917, he and several associates were arrested on dubious charges of plotting to overthrow the Serbian monarchy. In a secretive and controversial trial, they were convicted and sentenced to death. Apis, defiant to the end, was executed by a firing squad in June 1917, betrayed by the nation he had sought to empower. As the war dragged on, the Austro-Hungarian Empire collapsed under the weight of its ambitions. By 1918, Europe's map was redrawn, and the kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes, later Yugoslavia, emerged from the ashes. The vision of a unified Slavic state was realized, but at an unthinkable cost. The war claimed 20 million lives, became infamous for its horrific conditions, and obliterated the Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, Russian, and German empires. It also sowed the seeds for an even more devastating conflict, the Second World War.
I promised you blood, toil, tears, and sweat.
In May 1914, Sir Arthur Nicholson, a senior figure in the British Foreign Office, wrote to a colleague, "In all the years I've been in the Foreign Office, I have never seen such calm international waters." Contrary to later claims that the First World War was inevitable, global tensions at the time seemed to be easing. Over the previous 12 to 18 months, many believed war had become less likely, not more. The world even made it through 2 Balkan wars without there being broader configuration. The roots of the tragedy that became World War I lay in the antagonism between Serbian nationalism's dream of a greater Serbia and Austria-Hungary's determination to preserve territories coveted by Serbia. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand, however, shattered the fragile balance, triggering a chain reaction that plunged the world into chaos. For Serbia, the assassination proved to be a double-edged sword, emerging victorious from the war as a cornerstone of the new Yugoslavia. Serbia saw many of the nationalistic aspirations that had driven the young Bosnians and the Black Hand realized, yet the violent methods used to achieve these dreams left a lasting stain on the nation's history. The conspirators themselves became symbols of both defiance and destruction, their actions celebrated by some and condemned by others. Gavrilo Princip, who pulled the trigger, was immortalized as both a hero and a villain, his life and death inextricably tied to the moment that changed the world forever.